Good morning, friends. This is Yvonne Davis, author, astrologer, and life transformation coach. And it's the morning after Super Tuesday. I woke up early and checked the results, and I kind of knew what they were going to be from last night, but I wanted to wait until, enough of the results had come in to have a pretty, well, yeah, I would say we really do have a clear front runner at this point. And also to talk about my last video on Super Tuesday. So as always, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, click like on this video, share with friends and family and on social media, and leave your comments. So I am in a different location today. I'm at a hostel. Just needed to clear out the cobwebs in my head so I could focus on some other creative work. But I definitely had to do a video about the results. So first thing I want to say is that I had done a video looking at Biden, Bernie, Warren, and Bloomberg. And I said that Bloomberg would have the least favorable chart. But I did say that I thought Warren would do really well, and she did not. So I'm guessing she'll pull out at this point. I don't know about Bloomberg, but because he doesn't need to get money from funders. But anyway, I did want to explain that, in astrology, there's this thing called the rule of three, which means if you see something three times, like in three different charts, then you can pretty much guarantee that you can make an accurate prediction. I did a very kind of shallow, cursory exploration of the transits on the day of Super Tuesday on those four charts. So I would have needed to do a lot more research, but I didn't want to because we were so close to Super Tuesday anyway, which was going to give us the answer. So that's just an example of how the transits on any given day are not enough to give you an answer. You have to do a lot deeper research than that. And I've been saying for the longest time that there's something karmic going on in the United States that we're trying to work out, and we will work it out, and it will work out ultimately for the betterment of this country. So I'll just pull up this video is called "Can Biden Beat Trump?" And so I'll just pull up this chart and have a look at it. But again, what I want to say is that there's this deeper underlying karmic pattern that's going on, and that overrides the transits on any given day. There's an order that astrologers use, and you have to look at things that have a more fundamental karmic expression, such as the eclipses or the long-term transits, and lunations also, and progress charts, and there's all kinds of things that astrologers look at. So now that we know that Joe Biden's probably going to be the front runner because he did so well in Super Tuesday, and I have no doubt that's Joe Biden is the choice of the establishment, the Democratic establishment, because Bernie probably just feels a little too risky at this point. So I think it's safe to say Biden's going to receive the Democratic nomination. So now we can take the time to look in depth at all the different charts that can give us information about how well Biden can do against Trump in the election. So the thing I wanted to start with actually is the Scorpio Taurus full moon of 2020 on October 31st, because this is the lunation that occurs just like 4 days prior, 4 or 5 days. We've got the 31st and then the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So actually it's only 4 days prior to election day. And lunations have a 4 or 5 day window prior and after, because it's always a bell curve. So the actions or the events that are going to occur can start up to 4 or 5 days prior to a lunation, and then 4 or 5 days after. So this is well within that window to impact the elections themselves. So the first thing I want you to see now, the inside is Joe Biden's natal chart. The outside is the full moon, the Scorpio Taurus full moon on October 31st. And this is Uranus conjunct the full moon, okay? And it's a very, very tight conjunction. I mean, look at that, 8 degrees. And let's see, what's the difference here? 3 minutes. I mean, that's almost as tight as you can get, you know? So the Uranus is definitely going to impact this full moon. Full moons are powerful in themselves, but when you get a conjunction like this of Uranus to the full moon, and it's that tight, even though Uranus is the planet of unpredictability, I think it's safe to say something is definitely going to happen. And of course, because it's the planet of unpredictability, it's going to be unpredictable. Now, I have been saying in many of my videos that there's a revolution coming. And so even though it seems rather odd to me that we're going to have 2 old white men battling it out to be the leaders of this country, but something is going to change. And it's going to change big. And I've always said that the karma that we're going through in this nation relates back to the racism that this country was built on with slavery and the treatment of the Native Americans. That's old karma that has not completely been worked through yet. And we're going to make huge progress. Even though we have 2 white men battling it out, it does make a difference because Trump has clearly sided with the idea that of white supremacy, and that white privilege is good and should continue because they have a perception of white supremacy, and that's pretty much the belief of his solid base, the people who will never part ways with him. And I did some research on the demographics of this country, the United States, and apparently we're 60% Caucasian, and in 10 years, it'll be 48% Caucasian. So you can tell that the nation is changing. And so there's a need for readjustment, and there's a need to go back and explore the karma of this nation, as I said, is based in this issue of racism that needs to sort itself out and become a more just country. So looking at this Uranus conjunction to the full moon, now that reinforces the idea that we're in the midst of a revolution. And then we'll go and talk about what's happening on the election itself. But I can only do so much in each video, otherwise it would get way too long. So what you have to do is you have to go back and look at the other videos where all the pieces are being brought together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And so if you do that, you'll start to be able to put the pieces together. And I know there's still a lot of missing pieces, but from now until Inauguration Day, now that I think it's safe to say Biden is going to be the Democratic candidate, it'll be a lot easier to just look at his chart and look at Trump's chart or anything else that's relevant between now and Inauguration Day 2021 and start to put the pieces together and understand what this revolution is all about and what it's going to look like. So that's the most important thing to consider, is that this full moon conjunct Uranus is definitely, absolutely 100% going to have an impact on election day. Okay. And that means it's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be revolutionary. Doesn't tell us at this point who will actually win, but I'll continue to do research on the charts and see if I can get more and more clarity about that. But because Uranus is unpredictable, it could actually throw a wrench in the system. That's why it's so hard to make predictions when it comes to Uranus, because it is literally the planet of unpredictability. But as you can see here, it's right over his Biden's part of fortune in his sixth house of work. So that would be considered favorable. Okay. So we'll just start there. Okay. And then we'll go around and we'll see what else is happening that might indicate favorable or unfavorable aspects. So right here, Venus is conjunct his Neptune. That would be considered favorable. Venus is generally women, so a conjunction to his Neptune would be favorable. And it's making a quincunx down here to his natal moon. So again, it's connecting Venus, Neptune, and the moon, and that would be favorable. 11th house is the house of humanity. So it's taking two planets that represent women, and it's making a favorable connection between them, the two. And as I've said many times, the quincunx is you reap what you sow. So if he has reaped good karma with women, and it's got to be better than what Donald Trump has done, then he will reap the benefits of that. And then over here we see his sun, I'm sorry, the sun at the time of the full moon is conjunct his Mars. And there's about a 4-degree orb, but that's still close enough to call it a conjunction. So basically this is right over his Mars. So there's a very strong indication of activation in his chart, and that's important. You have to have activation. If there are no activation of planets in a natal chart, that's actually worse. It's actually worse than having squares and oppositions, to have nothing. You have to have activation of your natal planets. Otherwise, it's like being out on the ocean when there's no weather, and it's just a flat, placid blue, and the sky is completely blue, and you can't tell the difference between the water and the sky, and there's no wind, there's nothing. You're just floating out. You're hardly even floating. You're just there. There's nothing to move you or move your life. And so not having aspects is actually worse than having squares or oppositions. So it's good to see that he has some clear activation in his chart with this alignment and with the sun over his Mars, which also means that the full moon and Uranus are also activating his Mars. But there is this element of unpredictability, so we have to take that into account. That I think is going to play a huge, huge, massive role in what happens on election day. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's see what else. Okay, we have the planets here in his second house, Capricorn. The second house rules self-worth and income, personal assets, access to resources, and abundance. And so this would be his income, this would be his house of work, and this is the house of humanity. So the connection there, I think, is pretty obvious. All right, so again, with the planets in Capricorn, he has Pallas Athena, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, all the unbelievably potent planets here that are doing their job of restructuring power and authority in the government and bringing justice. That's what Jupiter does. Pallas Athena is the warrior goddess. So we've got some incredible energy in there to bring about a restructuring of power and authority and justice in our government. And these are making a beautiful sextile to his planets in Scorpio, to his Mars, his Mercury, his Sun, and his Venus. So That's extremely favorable for him. Okay, so I think there was one more thing I wanted to point out, which is the Mars retrograde, because I think that this could also throw a wrench into the works when it comes to the election day. With Uranus conjunct the full moon so tightly and Mars retrograde until November 12th, which is, well, let's see, that'll be 9 days after election day before it goes direct. And so these two things could really throw a wrench into the election. So let me go ahead and pull up Donald Trump's chart, but I definitely want to say more about that. I think it is going to play an important role in what happens on election day. All right, so as you can see, Donald Trump has some trines too. He has actually a lot going in his favor. So that's why we cannot discount him. And again, I think this is all karmic. It doesn't say that Donald Trump is better than Biden. It says that in order to activate the karma of this country so that we can do the work that we need to do, it may be that Trump is necessary to that. And I know that that's horrific for many of you to hear, that you can't believe it, you can't stand it. And I've really been trying in my videos to help you to see that when you talk about karma, you have to take this larger view of time. And you really have to, think geologically or think cosmically, like there's a kind of cosmic time involved in these kinds of things that are related to karma, the karmic lessons, the karmic unfolding. And that's why, in so many of my videos, I say you have to trust in divine justice, because divine justice always wins out in the end. And part of the trauma, and I use that word intentionally. Part of the trauma of the karma is to wake people up. People don't wake up when they're comfortable. And that's, I think, why karmically Donald Trump became president instead of Clinton, because the vast majority actually wanted Clinton, but that would have like, in a sense, put us to sleep. Like, oh, we're safe now, we can sleep at night. And we wouldn't have looked at the underlying karmic issues that needed to be dealt with. Trump is the shadow of this country. He's the incarnation of the shadow of this country. It's the karma and the integration that is essential to the health of this country. And these are the issues that we're working through. So let's see what we've got here. So it looks like Trump also has a conjunction of transiting Venus to his Neptune. So that's really interesting. In all honesty, I don't know what that means. I usually say that, well, Neptune is deception, but Neptune can also be spirituality. So there is something very karmic and spiritual about what's happening here. And it's interesting that Venus is activating Neptune in both of their charts, and they have a choice about how they use that energy. You can use it for deception, or you can use it for spiritual connection. That's up to the individual. And then we see Mercury which again is the planet of elections, and it's retrograde, is making a trine up here. Oh, actually, that's his Jupiter, his natal Jupiter, Uranus trining at 17 degrees. Mercury that's about about a 10-degree orb. So it is also making a sextile over here to his moon. So yeah, it's a pretty wide orb, but still it is activating in a positive way for him. And then he has Pluto on his vertex. So again, and it's making the finger of God. So again, that doesn't, you have to understand the way these things work out. It will eventually work out in toward divine justice, but whether or not that happens on election day, or there's still more karmic unfolding that needs to happen and that requires him to win the election, it could still happen. So you cannot take for granted that Biden will win. You absolutely have to get out there and vote. And it's not just who you vote for president, it's also voting for other offices, you know, the House, the Senate, local governors, local congressmen and women, because it all works together, you know. It's like if Trump had had more people who in the government to begin with who were on his side, he would have done a lot more damage. And the 2018 election helped to balance things, although it wasn't quite enough. The Democrats really absolutely need to get control of both houses of Congress, because yeah, I mean, you saw what happened, so I don't need to tell you, you know, you're paying attention, you know what happened. So we have to get control of the House and the Senate just in case Donald Trump gets reelected. But that could be part of the unfolding karma, is that if he's supposed, karmically, if he's supposed to get reelected, then we need to have control of the House and Senate in order to do the restructuring of power and authority and justice that should have happened earlier in 2020 that didn't happen. All right, so going up here again to look at, before I look at and talk about Mars retrograde and the moon conjunct Uranus again, that's interesting. Uranus is also retrograde. So we have 3 important retrograde planets here. I'm not so concerned about, you know, like Neptune retrograde or Chiron retrograde, but Mars, Uranus, and Mercury are very important because Mars and Mercury are inner planets and they're retrograde. And Uranus is playing such an important role in this chart that the fact it's retrograde really does matter. All right, so then we have the North Node, and it's over his, and also the part of fortune, if he's in Washington, D.C., and it's over his North Node because he's having a North Node return, and that's also considered favorable, and it's also very karmic. So again, whatever happens, it's happening because karmically it's meant to happen in order for these planets to completely unfold and do their jobs, okay? Again, that's Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, and Pallas Athena, which has been activated for quite a while, but certainly since early 2020 with the with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction and the full moon eclipse on January 10th. This is still unfolding. I mean, people who don't understand astrology don't understand how something that happened almost a year ago can still, you know, be unrolling its karmic effect. But that's the way eclipses work. It's still doing its karmic job. And so we need to give it a chance. I know it takes forever and it makes you guys feel like you're going to lose your minds with anxiety, but I don't lose my mind with anxiety because I absolutely have 100% faith in divine justice. My faith does not waver even an inch. And so I don't have any anxiety because I know it's all going to work out in the end. I feel sad for people whose lives are damaged and who are suffering, but in terms of how it's ultimately going to roll out, I know it's ultimately going to be for the better. And it's not just better than Trump, but better than it would have been if Clinton had won. So I know a lot of you may not understand that, but we had to work through the integration of our shadow and do this karmic work. And it will lead to something better in the end. So again, Saturn is structure and authority. Pluto is power and wealth. Jupiter is justice, and Pallas Athena is the warrior goddess. And so this indicates a restructuring of power and authority in order to create justice. And with Pallas Athena in there, that means that the feminine energy is also a very, very important part of this whole process, as we've already seen that to be true. So I want to go back here and touch on the Mars retrograde again and the full moon conjunct Uranus, because, and also touch on the fact that Mercury is retrograde as well, because I suspect we may end up with another Bush Gore situation. Now, I've seen this happen twice now in my lifetime. First with Bush and Gore, when they were, I think that was, 2000, when the election results did not come out on election night, and we had to do a recount, and that was pretty stressful. And Gore had actually won the popular vote very clearly, but Bush was not going to give up, and he ultimately ended up winning. And I think that's partly because of the fact that that Gore conceded, and I'm not so sure that was the right decision for Gore to make. But anyway, it's history; it's ancient history now. So, and then we saw it again with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, where Clinton won the popular vote, but he won the electoral college. And unfortunately, it goes to the winner of the electoral college, the way our system is set up right now. But there have been a lot of changes since then. And so, but I still think that because of the Mercury retrograde and the Mars retrograde and the full moon conjunct Uranus, that something like that is going to happen. It's just going to really throw a wrench into the system. And I don't think we're going to have the answers on the night, on election night. So it'll probably, that's my best guess, is it'll probably be a Bush Gore type situation, and it will require a recount, and it's not gonna go over easy this time. Not like, I mean, compared to the Bush Gore situation, the Bush Gore situation will look easy compared to what it's going to be like in 2020. Because I don't know about Joe Biden, but Donald Trump does not give up. And I think that that's the biggest issue, that's what's going to cause the problems come Inauguration Day, is I suspect Donald Trump will not give up power. And that's going to cause the so-called revolution. And like I said, my intuition tells me it's not going to be a violent revolution. And I'm going to look, I got to do more research, because, as I'm making this video, I've only talked about one chart, this Scorpio Taurus full moon. I've brought in, the other things like the Pluto Saturn conjunction and the full moon eclipse in early January. But there's so many things you have to look at in order to make accurate predictions regarding, what's going to unfold and why it's unfolding and how it's going to unfold. So this video is probably already getting really long, and I've only looked at one chart. This is what it's like to be an astrologer. I know a lot of people, they come to these videos and they just want you to tell them in black and white who's going to win, who's going to lose, or whatever. It doesn't work that way. We're dealing with really, really deep energies here on the astral plane. And it takes time for them to unfold. And what astrologers do is they try to read the cosmic bodies to understand the meaning of what is happening and to get some clues about what's going to unfold, so that we can adjust psychologically and spiritually and expand our consciousness in order to meet what is going to happen. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I know it does to a lot of you, because there's people who put comments on my thread that I'm just so impressed with you guys. I mean, so many of you out there who subscribe to my channel or view my videos are just really, really evolved. And I just want to say that, because I really appreciate having people who can understand this stuff. That it's not just black and white. There's a lot of deep, deep stuff going on. And we have to be active participants in that. We can't just sit back and watch TV or watch a YouTube channel and think it's all going to be solved for us, because it doesn't work that way. We have to be active participants in the alchemy of our national karma. Okay, so having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to a close. But I want to reinforce what I was saying about the fact that it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and it takes time to bring all the pieces together. And there's still a lot of pieces missing in this jigsaw puzzle. So, but I think it's going to be a lot easier now that we can just pretty much just focus on Biden's chart. And I say that not just because of how well he did on Super Tuesday, but also because of the fact that I mean, I can say, you know, with 100% confidence that the establishment really did not want Bernie to be the candidate. And I know a lot of you love Bernie. I love Bernie too, but it's just too risky in this day and age. Maybe, well, sometimes I think, well, maybe it would be good to have someone who is just, you know, could really electrify the people. But the majority in this country, like myself, you know, I grew up in the era of duck and cover. You know, when I was in elementary school, we did duck and cover. And when I was in high school, you know, we were terrified of a nuclear winter. And you know, I was young, but I did live through the Reagan years. And we were in a let's see, they came up with this term called mutually assured destruction, MAD, mutually assured destruction. And you know, we were in an arms race with the USSR, and they just couldn't keep up, and so the Berlin Wall fell, and they did perestroika, and the Soviet Union broke up. But the thing about it is that those wounds are old, and they don't go away. You know, a lot of new people are coming in, being born, who did not live through that. But I lived through the era where if someone called you a communist or even a socialist, like, you were scared, you know, or if you heard the word communist or socialist, like, you were scared. And it shut people up fast. And that fear still lingers. So it's too risky. As much as I do love Bernie and think that he would bring good things to this country, and I'm not afraid, because there's a difference between democratic socialism and totalitarianism. And I think Donald Trump is actually much more totalitarian. And so I'm more afraid of Donald Trump. I think Bernie has integrity. He wants to spread democracy. He wants to have a lot of people participating in power. And whereas Donald Trump is the totalitarian, he's the wannabe dictator. But unfortunately, those words were they were embedded in their neural networks as being something terrifying, as equating to totalitarianism. And we need more generations to pass before people will get over that. So that's the end of my message. And be sure to check back to those other videos where I do talk about the 2021 inauguration. A lot of people put comments on my videos, and because they were confused, like, why are you talking about the 2021 inauguration? We need to talk about the election first. But actually, I think believe it or not, I think that what's going to happen on Inauguration Day in 2021 is actually more important than what's going to happen on Election Day. And it'll just take time for me to keep looking at the charts and explain that so you'll understand it. But do go back and look at those videos to help put together this jigsaw puzzle, and I'll keep creating more pieces of it too, so we can really understand what's coming. All right, so I can put the links above, so it's easier for you to find those videos, or you can go to the homepage of my channel, or click on the links at the end of this video. So thank you again for sticking with me, and I just I'm so grateful for all of you who are what I would call my true fans, and I appreciate you all so much. So that's it for today, and I will see you again next time.